Welcome to the I Am Jen Wilson, the Healing Rebel podcast, and I am very excited to have Siobhan on with me today. So I have only just said words to Siobhan for the first time 2 seconds ago before I hit record. We have met through the Success Collective business bubble, so I'm excited to get to hear a little bit more about what Siobhan does and get her to share some of her wisdom with the listeners. So welcome, Siobhan. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. Wisdom. I hope I've got some wisdom to share.
Yes, you will. Everybody has wisdom to share. So why don't you do a wee introduction to the listeners to tell them a bit about yourself?
Okay, well, my name's Siobhan. I'm a police officer. I've been in the police for about 8.5 years now. But I'm also a yoga teacher and I've recently done my level 2 gym instruction qualification, and I'm working towards getting my personal training qualification too. So I've started a little business on the side, which is called the Shift Worker Yogi, which is basically like who I am. I'm a shift worker, but I'm also a yogi. And kind of stems from my own journey of dealing with the stress that comes alongside shift work and trying to find something to manage that. And for me, it's been yoga, and that's been the journey I've taken. And because I found it so helpful for me, and I think it can be helpful for other people who do shift work. So I'm trying to encourage and promote people to maybe give it a go, because I think some people hear the words yoga and they think, oh, I can't touch my toes, or it's hippies or something like that. But I think there's a lot of benefits to it, particularly in high stress jobs, and being able to switch off is really important. So that's the kind of path I'm going down at the moment, and just trying to bring it to people like me who maybe haven't tried it before.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I think I teach yoga as well, and a lot of people will say, oh, I'm not flexible enough to do that, and you're kind of like, it's not what it's about, but okay. But also, when I did my degree, I did a degree in sport and exercise science, and there was a big part of that we did public health and lifestyle interventions. And one of the studies we looked at was a World Health Organization study that had followed 50,000 nurses over, I think, a 20-year span, and they were looking at health implications of shift work. It's one of the things that came up. And what they were finding was people that weren't taking care of their health and weren't putting in lifestyle practices to help manage their stress were at greater risk of obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, shorter, like their life expectancy were shortened, and they were sort of linking as shift work as an attribution to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen quite a few studies as well about how night shifts are sort of carcinogenic almost, and then you see links between maybe potentially increased rates of breast cancer and things in some women who work night shifts, for quite a prolonged period of time. So there are certainly health elements which I don't think you're told about when you start doing shift work. I remember when I started the police, there was no sort of, guidebook or anything about how to go from doing like a 9 to 5 job to suddenly being, doing 3 different shifts in a week or so. So it's kind of like a learning process, which I think you're sort of just thrown in the deep end. And some people find things that work for them, and others just kind of like get by on lots of energy drinks and lack of sleep. And yeah, it's probably quite concerning how unhealthy shift workers probably are because of that.
And it is so important, because the people who do shift work are people who are saving lives. Like, you are the protection and lifesavers from police, fire, paramedics, nurses, doctors. You're all doing really important jobs.
Yeah. Or lack of sleep. I find it quite scary actually. Yeah, it's only recently I thought about it, we're driving cars, with the blue lights on, can be quite fast, various road conditions. I live out in the quite countryside area, so the roads are all quite windy, single tracks, that sort of thing. And you're having to make, life or death decisions, or decisions associated with risk. And quite often you're doing it in the middle of the night when maybe you had like 4 hours sleep before you came to work. So yeah, there's a lot of, you're doing an important job, but actually, are you looking after yourself enough? Are you in the right frame of mind to be making those decisions?
Yeah. So what have you then found have been the things that have worked best for you so far?
So for me, I've always been quite an active person, and like my idea of like working out was always doing something that was like quite sweaty and really high intensity. And then with high intensity and like stress with the shift work, I felt like I was always really high. Like I wasn't ever getting a nice, real, like any time to chill out, because for me, I was like, oh, I don't have time to lie around on the floor for an hour or whatever. Um, but then I got shingles in 2021, so I was kind of had to force myself to think about doing something else. So I started yoga more frequently, and yin yoga in particular. So yin yoga is more of a passive form of yoga. It's not really flowy. You hold the poses for a number of minutes, and it allows you to get your body to kind of release into the pose, working into the deeper connective tissue, but it also allows you to come to stillness and silence in your mind as well. So it was allowing me to find a little bit of um, mental space, I suppose, from like the day-to-day life. So for me, that's been really helpful, like along with breath work and not being afraid just to lie and not do anything. You know, I feel like sometimes you just always pick up your phone, even though you're not doing anything on it, you're just scrolling aimlessly, or TV's on in the background, but you're not actually watching it. So that was helpful. And also I do cold water swimming, so I love going in the sea. And for me, that's always a really good way to clear my head as well.
Yeah, yeah. They're all really important things. And I used to be like yourself, on the go all the time. Like I loved that adrenaline buzz, that adrenaline high I got from doing the high intensity exercise. And for myself, I got to a point where I burned my body out. I ended up getting diagnosed with Crohn's disease and endometriosis, and had to completely change my whole approach to it. And it's interesting how we have to have quite a we don't have to. Lots of people seem to get to a point where there's a big life event, and it might be an illness or something else that has to stop them to be able to reassess what they're doing and go, maybe I need to change things up a little bit.
Yeah, it's a shame that we can't figure it out before it gets to that stage. I think it's also just the world that we live in at the moment. We're kind of forced or encouraged, or it seemed like normal to always be rushing around. Everyone wants to know everything straight away, you know, social media and everything like that. So I think that's why if you do want to take a step back, sometimes I don't know if it's like not frowned upon, but maybe people, I suppose it comes back to that kind of protecting yourself, but not making it seem like it's weakness, or not feeling like it's showing weakness by saying, no, I don't want to do that, or like saying no, or yeah, stepping back from the busy rush, hustle and bustle of everything that we have to do day to day.
Yeah, I think culturally, and I think obviously the capitalist structure has so many benefits, but it also has this: we need to be going, you need to be efficient and productive every minute of the day, and if you're not doing something productive, there's something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just like, what? My wee brother is the complete opposite to me. He is somebody who's very chill and very laid back. And I've asked him numerous times how to teach me how to do this, because I'm like, during lockdown, he got put on furlough. So he spent 18 months sitting, chilling, watching the TV, not doing anything because he couldn't work, because his work had been shut down. And I was like, but do you not feel like you should sign up for something or like learn a course or do it? And he was like, no. And like we're so polar opposite. I'm like, can you teach me just how to be a wee bit more like you? And he's like, it's just in my nature.
That sounds like a good nature to have.
That
Yeah, I'd
nature.
probably be the same. I'd be like, what can I do in all this free time? You know, sitting around the house, I could learn a language, or yeah, get another qualification or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did all that even though I was still working, because I just took all my classes online. So I was still working, and I was working more than I am now. And I was absolutely exhausted because I was trying to do everything. I'm like, I have to fill my time. I'm going to be bored.
Yeah.
Oh.
How did you find going online from being in person? Did you find it okay transition, or?
Yeah, well, there was a couple of times we had been snowed, but there had been snow, so we had to cancel class, like going in person, and we'd done a class on like a Facebook Live. So when this came in, I was like, oh, we've done that before, so we can just do the class. It's only a couple of weeks. Um,
Yeah.
so everybody was fine about doing that transition. And then when it came to things opening back up, a lot of the people were very resistant to going back in person. They wanted to stay online, so we've ended up staying. Like I've still got 3 classes that I have as online classes,
Mhm.
and I've only just recently started back in person, one in person class, and set it up as a new class. It's been strange that coming back into normality, but it's not the same normality as it was before.
Yeah, I think some people are happy to do online still, whereas others sort of crave that in-person attention and like I don't know, like the community feeling maybe get in a class. But it's funny when you look back and see, pictures of loads of yoga mats like squished right beside each other, and you'd practically be, could almost touch the person beside you. Whereas now that feels weird, like I wouldn't want to be that close to someone.
I know, you used to literally have mats squashed right against each other. But the only space you need is your space of your mats. So you need some personal space. How are you finding your colleagues? Like, are they embracing your message and what you have to offer?
Yeah, some of them are. I've got a few people that have signed up and done. I've run a couple of little sort of online courses or programs, whatever you want to call them, which are sort of pre-recorded yoga videos that you sort of what was it called? It's like slow down and stretch. I think one of them was called. And then in January, I did one that was like move for 20 minutes a day in January. So trying to just get across, it doesn't have to be like I say, hours and hours of yoga practice. It can be something like 20 minutes is more than enough to kind of get you disconnected from your day and give your body a little bit of movement. So yeah, some of them are really enjoying it. I just think there's still a lot of work to do though to try and convince others. Um, I'm not sure. It's hard. I think in the police, a lot of people, particularly like people who've been in for a while or older in service, as you'd call them, they've got quite like a hardy mindset, like a tough kind of exterior. They don't let any emotion show. Don't want to show any kind of weakness. They don't want to say if something's bothered them or upset them. They just kind of shrug it off as like, well, that's part of the job. So those people are like the hard ones to crack. I think maybe people who are a bit newer in are more likely to be more amenable to it. And it's funny, I was just reading something in the paper today, and it was about there was the Scottish Superintendent's Conference recently, and one of the quotes that they've used is that the Gen Z um, police recruits don't want to work weekends and they want to be more flexible. So they're just talking about how if we want to continue recruiting people, because we've got the lowest numbers at the moment for quite a number of years, if we want to get newer people in, younger people in, then we have to be a bit more flexible in the working patterns and things like that, which is quite interesting because I think people who've been in and started years ago would just be like, oh, just suck it up, just deal with it, that's just part of the job. Whereas actually I think having a work-life balance is much more important, and that's something that shift work needs to kind of catch up with. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually does happen or not.
Yeah, that will be interesting to see because my grandpa was in the police and he was the secretary of the Federation for quite a number of years back in the 70s, and he advocated for better pay for officers, better working conditions for officers, and he was a big advocate of trying to change the shift pattern because it was so challenging, and because like you would be working so many days on a night shift and then all of a sudden have to flip to a day shift or having things mixed and matched, and he was like, you can't have people working like that.
Mm.
And trying to make it fairer. And then I know from friends and people that I know that work in the hospitals, they went from having a shift pattern that worked for them to all of a sudden them changing it to make all their days longer, but it meant that they worked less days, but they were absolutely knackered in those longer periods of time. So it's trying to find, because obviously 24 hours a day needs to be covered, but then how do you do that so that people are not burning out within the time frame that they're doing it, because all your jobs are very important.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you have, like, if you could wave a magic wand for shift workers to have it a particular way, would you have you got an idea of how it could work in a better way?
I don't know. It's difficult. Like in the police, it's just about efficiency. So there's also been stuff in the paper, or the Federation been talking about this as well. Actually, I think the Chief Constable said something about it. So if we get cited for court, so if we report any offences or things to the court, then we have to go and give evidence as witness if we're cited for it. And so many times you're cited on one of your rest days, and that means that you're not getting your full days off to recover. You're having to come in. You do get a day back at some other time, but you don't really get a chance like to choose when it is. Um, but the chances of you actually getting used to go to court are so slim. Like you rarely ever get called up. And that's to do with the court system as well. But it's just like if there was more efficiency in knowing in advance that no, that person's not going to be needed, so they can be cancelled from attending, which means you're not going to be disrupted on your rest days.
Yeah.
And if you're also cited for court and you're meant to be on like a back shift or a night shift, then your shift will change. So then you'll go to a day shift, which means then your night shift, you're one short. So if that happens so many times, you can think that there's so many people who should be working but actually aren't because they're cited for court and they never get called to court. So actually the point of them being chained was pointless. So then people are always working with less numbers on the team, which means everyone's doing a bit more or there's less people to go round. So everyone's feeling a bit stretched. So I think little things like efficiency of what people are actually doing. Plus we spend a lot of time dealing with mental health calls, which means we spend a lot of time with people at the hospital, which is can be a bit of a bugbear because hospital's meant to be a place of safety as well, but we've got to sit with them because if it was someone who's potentially like a flight risk and they were to run off, then they become the same person, and then we've got to try and find them again. So it's just easier to sit with them than have to deal with a potentially high risk missing person. But then again, you're thinking that's two people who could be out on the street doing other things or sitting in hospital, and that's the same across like every policing division. So if you can imagine how many people are not actually doing like policing, like solving crimes basically. We're doing lots of other stuff, but not dealing with crime. I don't want to go off a tangent, but like the last few shifts I've done, I could write down what the calls are, and it's concern for, concern for, concern for,
Yeah.
like not actual dealing with crimes, which
Yeah.
frustrating.
Yeah. And that's like a whole political, they need to bring other people in that deal with that sort of stuff so that the police officers dealing with the crime stuff can do the crime.
Yeah. But then I know it's not, the frontline people in the hospital's fault either because
Yeah.
they're running short too. That's why we're then sitting with them. So it's like this horrible vicious cycle that everyone's running ragged, and the way they think to sometimes, we'll get asked, so if we're doing only ever happens really on this shift, it's a 2 till midnight shift. And then the night shift come in at 10 and they're short and there's loads of jobs, there's loads of hospital escorts, whatever. And then you get asked at 10 o'clock, oh, can you ask if a couple of people stay on an extra 2 hours? And you just think, no, why should people stay on an extra 2 hours? Because haven't planned efficiently to have enough people to work now.
Yeah.
And you're expecting they've already worked 10 hours, you want them to work an extra 2 to then come back in 12 hours time. But I just think those little, or just ask them to stay an extra 2 hours, so they don't think about the knock-on effects that's going to have. And some people will happily stay, a couple of hours of overtime, but and I'm sure I would have done maybe in my prime when I was just in the door. But it's sort of you don't want to help a system that's broken, and that's what I think that does.
Yeah, yeah, and it definitely needs to be from a political standpoint more money needs to be given so that more recruitment can happen to fulfill and have plentiful jobs, and then that helps look after everybody from mental health, physical health perspective. Because if you're doing those extra couple of hours, then that's an extra couple of hours you're not getting to rest, recover, eat, etc., etc. And then when you come on to your next shift, you're already 2 hours down. And then if you get asked to do that 2 hours again, then that's your 4 hours down. And then that's just going to accumulate very rapidly because you can't just catch up.
Yeah.
When it comes to sleep and rest and stuff like that, it's not like, oh, I'll catch up at the weekend. Your body doesn't work like that. It needs to sit within real time. So what would if somebody's listening to this and they are just starting out in shifts, or even if they are a seasoned shift worker but are finding it challenging, what would your tips be to help, especially for people that have having to work that night shift? When would you advise people to eat, exercise? Like, how would you get them to fit that in?
So After a night shift, as much as you want to lie in bed for as long as possible. So after the last night shift, if it's your last night shift and then you're going to days off, try and get up earlier than you would normally. Maybe say, so if I finish at 7, I'll try and get up like 11 or 12. It's only maybe 4 hours sleep or so, but you're getting up when it's still light outside. It might not be sunny because it's in Scotland, but getting some daylight is really important to get like to boost your energy, to boost your mood. Um, Drinking lots of water is also good. I always have like a little Barocca thing in my water. And then on that first day after, I'm usually quite tired, so I'll do something more slow. Like I'll do maybe like a bit of yin yoga or just like a slow flow. Try and get some fresh air and do some steps. So just like moving, so you're not being sluggish, you're not just lazing around. And then by the time it comes to the evening, you actually feel like you've done something with your first day off, because often if you just lie around, then it comes to bedtime, but because you've been lazing all day, you can't then sleep. So then you're just up really late and then you're not getting into a good sort of bedtime routine. So you kind of want to get up early enough, do some stuff that tires you out so that you can then get back into going to bed at a decent time. So then the next day you're waking up more normal time and can actually make the most of your day. Um, and I kind of try and like bookend my rest days. So like the first one I'll be quite slow, like I say, and then in the middle, if I'm meeting people, or because socializing for me it takes a lot of energy as well. So doing that or some workout in the 2 middle days, and then on the last day before you go back to work, try and have it a bit of a slower day as well. So don't totally run yourself into the ground and then you're back getting up early again. Um, so yeah, it's just trying to find the best balance, but not always feeling like you need to force yourself to do stuff. So if you feel like doing something slower, then that's fine. And equally, I'm not saying don't lie on the sofa if you want to. It's good to lie on the sofa and just chill out. But moving is good for your body and it helps your mind as well. So just trying to incorporate that in a wee bit too.
And what about the days that you're actually doing the night shifts? So like, what sort of times do you eat in those days? Do you eat while you're through the night time, or are you trying to eat during normal eating times?
It kind of depends. I used to have like tea and toast in if I could on a night shift, maybe at like 2 or 3 in the morning. But actually, more recently, I've not been eating as much. Maybe just having a bit of yogurt or something. Just I like to have something. Some people don't eat at all, but maybe a bit of yogurt or some fruit. And then when I come in the morning, I'll have like a breakfast before I go to sleep, so that when I wake up, I kind of then go into like a lunch. I'll have
Mhm.
something kind of like lunchy. And then usually try and have a decent dinner a bit later. So maybe like 8 or 9 before I go in for a 10 o'clock start. So that kind of keeps you fuller throughout the night.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, but equally, sometimes it depends, it could be go and get some sweets or something to snack on, but that's usually just out of boredom rather than anything else. So I try not to do that too often.
yeah. Because I do know of people who will like sleep all through the day and then have their meals sort of like, so when they wake up they'll have their breakfast and then go into work, and then at some point then they'll have a lunch and then have a dinner and have
Mm.
like eat through the night. But that's actually, you want to try and eat through your daylight hours, because that's when your digestion is up. When the sun's up, your digestion's up.
Hmm.
I mean, it's down, your digestion's down, because that's ideally when you would be sound asleep resting. But if you're working, you're not. And I know some people like just switch their meals around to suit when they're actually awake, but that is good to hear that you're not doing that, because that's going to work better for your metabolism and for your
Yeah.
energy.
I mean, I know some people, go and get McDonald's meals in the middle of the night and things, which is, fine if they want to do that. But then you just think it's all sort of just sitting on your stomach, and then it's harder to get out of it and get back into the routine
Mm-hmm.
of, whereas if you just try and keep a normal-ish, maybe not eating
Oh,
too much during the night, then it means when you come back onto your days off, it's easy enough to just sort of tweak it a wee bit. Whereas I think flipping it so dramatically, I think that'd be harder to try and switch
yeah,
back the other way.
yeah, because your body would be confused. Because
Yeah.
sometimes in the daytime, sometimes you're eating in the nighttime, and it would just be very, very confused. So is there any other tips or anything that you want to share before we wrap up for today?
I suppose just from a kind of like mental health side of it, because I'm really interested in like mental health and mental well-being and things. Like I thought there's a lot of expectation when you're in kind of shift work or like emergency services that you just have to, you're expected to deal with lots of traumatic things and maybe just like manage it yourself. And I suppose just to say to anyone if they were struggling with anything to reach out and speak to someone, not feel like they need to suffer in silence, and give yourself a break. Like you're a human dealing with lots of emotional situations. It's not abnormal to feel upset by things or traumatized by things. And I think sometimes, particularly like I'm talking about these older in the tooth kind of officers you might work alongside, they give that impression that, oh, just part of the job, get over it sort of thing. So yeah, if you need to speak, you should speak to someone.
Absolutely, because I think people who like, and I don't work in emergency services, I'm just taking this from what my grandpa used to tell me, but people in emergency services see things that we would never, like us normies would never, you just couldn't even get your head around the stuff that you come across
Yeah.
in so many different situations that, yeah, and for people who are dealing with everyday life and we find normal stuff traumatic and difficult to deal with, when you're seeing things that are undescribable to or really horrific, then yeah, you definitely do need to talk that out with somebody to help just clear it
Yeah.
out.
I
Yeah.
think as well, if you're noticing it's changing who you are, like if you're snappy at home with friends and family, or you're like withdrawing and thinking about things over and over that maybe happened on a certain shift, then that's when you maybe know that actually maybe that thing's not sitting quite right with you, and it's worth reaching out either in organization or through various organizations that you can find online and stuff. And that's why yoga's really helpful, because it allows you to really disconnect from things. So instead of sitting at home and sort of replaying things over and over again, it can help you get into a space where you're just sort of sitting with whatever you're feeling, but also with the breath and the movement. It kind of takes your mind off sort of the rumination process. So try
Yeah.
yoga.
Yeah, definitely try yoga. Definitely try yoga, and try yoga with Siobhan. Definitely.
Yeah.
Your Instagram page is very inspirational. So
Oh, thank you.
awesome. So your Instagram handle is,
It's the shift worker yogi
yeah.
fitness now. I've added fitness on the end because I've just done my level 2. But yeah, shift worker yogi fitness, encouraging people to move a bit more for their mental health and a healthy mind, healthy body. So yoga and some strength workouts as well.
Yeah, brilliant, amazing. And is it just Instagram you're on, or have you got a website, Facebook, anything,
I have a
anywhere else?
website as well. Yeah, it's the same. It's the shiftworkeryogifitness.co.uk. And I haven't done Facebook for business yet. That's enough for me. Social Instagram, I can barely handle that.
Well, you do a very good job of it, as
Oh,
you are.
thank you. It's very kind.
So I'll put those links into the show notes for wherever anybody's watching this. And if anybody is listening to this and knows somebody who's a shift worker or wants to reach out to Siobhan, then please do. And if you can share it, like it, do all that stuff so that other people get to see and hear what Siobhan has to say. And hopefully it will help lots of people. So thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you. Oh, let me stop recording.